Penn State fans, first of all, happy Labor Day to each and every one of you. Bob Flounders here with Max Ralph. Labor Day weekend, we're here to talk a little Penn State football. Just heard from James Franklin, who was pretty good today. He's always good, right? But he was pretty good today in his press conference. Penn State, winners by 35 over Nevada. They got Florida International coming in Saturday at noon. He got to a lot of stuff, Max. We're going to talk about. It really sounds like Fischer could make his 2025 debut on Saturday. He had some interesting insight into the special teams, the play of Ethan Grunkemeyer. He talked about the play of the D-line reserve guys. I think everyone knows that Denai's really good and Zane's really good, but I asked him about that. He talked about that. I just want to say, though, I just always get a laugh, Max. I don't know if you picked up on it, but at the end of the game, talked about it in his Saturday post-game presser, just referenced it a little bit in his little preamble before he took questions. Max, I think you probably picked up on it. James Franklin is still pretty annoyed with that late touchdown and the officiating, I think, mess up that kind of greatly contributed to it. They'd only allowed 3 points. The other team scored. Nevada scored late, tacked on a 2-pointer. He is pretty frosted still. almost 48 hours later about that. I can appreciate, though, somebody like just holding a grudge, keeping receipts. I kind of respect that, and I bet a month from now, Max, if a fan or we just kind of joked with him about that, he'll just go right into it again. I don't think he's going to let go of this until 2026.
I think there are 11 seasons worth of beatdowns against the University of Maryland to prove that James Franklin holds a grudge. So, yeah, I'm pretty sure he's still a little peeved about that. I'm also certain that it's one of those plays that James Franklin sent to the Big Ten office for review. Obviously it didn't have any impact on the game, but a little funny that it does keep coming up.
It did have an impact, though, on something that is, I think that James Franklin is a little bit of aware of. It costs, because there's a lot of Penn State fans who bet Penn State. It cost Penn State to cover. The line was 42.5 at kickoff, so I still think that played into it as well. But I'm a degenerate, so I could be wrong. But Max,
Bob, I told everybody to take the under, so I'll rest on my laurels for that one.
All right. So Max, there's a lot of ways we could start this. I would just two of the more newsworthy items. Why don't we just start with those?
Yeah.
Fischer, veteran. I think this is his 6th year. Dealt with, I think, 2 significant knee injuries. Missed all of last year. James has talked him up and said, "Look, we're excited. We think this guy can really make a big impact." Sounds like he was a little dinged up in preseason camp. Knowing who they were playing early, I don't think there was any rush to get him back. James said that Zariah expected to play against Nevada, and they kind of held him out, which was a smart move. But if not this week, I definitely by the time Oregon rolls into town, they're going to have Zariah. I know they're going to get him. They want to get him practicing, and they want to get him some game reps. I think that was significant. And I also think, even though it's special teams, that James revealed that Gabe Nwosu, I hope I said that right, correct me if I'm wrong, is going to be the punter. And he can do a lot of different things for Penn State. He's the kickoff guy, and he's also going to be the long field goal guy, much like Jordan Stout was late in his Penn State career. He's a guy that can impact the game a lot of different ways. And James said, "Look, we've seen him a lot in practice." And he was talking about him as a punter, and he basically, I think he said, his A game is as good as anyone's in the country. I'm actually excited about this. I don't know how you feel about it, but I thought those are the 2 most significant newsworthy nuggets from his Monday presser.
Yeah, let's start off with Zariah, which what Franklin said was basically he walked into the stadium. He was excited to play. They told him, "No, we're going to hold you back because you just haven't gotten enough reps yet. In practice, there's no sense." Obviously, they did not need him to win that game by a whole lot of points. Why risk anything? Make sure he's up to full speed in practice. Sounds like, as you said, Bob, if it's not this week, it's probably next. I'm certain that they'd want him to play against one of
Yeah.
FIU or Villanova before getting thrown in against Oregon. But all good news there. We'll have some conversation about the guys behind him as well. I'm sure, but yeah, good to have Fischer on his way back because
Yeah.
he's needed. Wosu is
Okay, so it's
that's how
Wosu. I apologize, Gabe. Wosu.
the pronunciation guide has it, at least. Wosu.
Okay.
What an interesting story, Bob, because yeah, as James Franklin said, his A ball ever since he's been on campus really has been as good as anybody's. Has really been the best on the team, but the consistency piece is just what they didn't have. And he said this summer it just really clicked for him, which he's been on campus a long time, so good for
Yeah.
him that it finally happened. He's obviously a monster on the field. He looks like he should be playing
DN,
defensive
offensive
line.
tackle. Yeah.
He's 6'6" and well over 200 pounds. He wears the number 99. Certainly looks like a guy that could play somewhere else. But
Yeah.
he's a kicker and a punter. Yeah, like you said, he was in the competition for the place kicker job with Ryan Barker, who has been pretty good ever since he
Yeah.
got the job last year. He's been consistent and accurate. Riley Thompson has done good things as the punter the past 2 years. I thought he struggled a little bit last year. 2 years ago, he was better. But
Yeah.
still, multi-year starter, a guy who has experience, a guy who they've trusted in the past. And then you get Wosu here, who does the kickoff specialist stuff, and he just has a huge camp. Sounds like you said, to say, like you mentioned, James Franklin said, it's the closest thing we've had since Jordan Stout. That is big praise. Jordan
Yeah.
Stout kicked both field goals and punts, and now he's in the NFL making a lot of money with the Baltimore Ravens and doing
Yeah.
a good job. So that's big praise.
Yeah.
The consistency there is interesting. Absolutely, two really newsworthy things, Bob.
Yeah, and I think he also said at one point, I think, just to illustrate what this guy can be if he's on. I think he said in one of the preseason practices, he made a 62-yard field goal, and he said it would easily have been good. I think from like at least 65, and that's good stuff. And James has kind of hinted. He hasn't hinted. He said, "Look, this year, Justin Lustig, second year, our special teams were a major factor in that Minnesota win with the fake punt.
Yeah, yeah,
I would also argue that they don't beat USC without Barker going 4 for 4. I think Barker, he's 4 for 4 this year. He was like either 16 of 19 or 15 of not. He's only missed I think 3 or 4 field goals, and that's also significant. I would just add that as he talks about the impact of the special teams, if you look at the return game.
yeah.
Eventually, I think a guy like maybe Zion Tracy, when he's healthy, could return punts. I think Devontae Ross, who returned a punt against Iowa for a touchdown, is another guy that could help the punt return. Nick Singleton has returned some kicks for scores, at least one. He had one called back last year, so that's a weapon. So they do really have some impact players at just about every aspect of the kicking game. And James, I don't think would have said something like that if he didn't. If he couldn't back it up. I think he feels really good about the kicking game, and it's not going to necessarily maybe matter in the first 3 games, but in the Big Ten, especially on the road, they're going to probably need all 3 phases to produce. I think this is a pretty significant story. I'm actually looking forward now because Penn State didn't punt against Nevada.
Yeah,
I'm pretty excited. I think it's going to happen on. It should happen on Saturday. I'm excited. I'm happy for that kid to hang in there, Gabe. I think that's a really good story. What else, Max? What else? We were listening to him. You said he was in a good mood. What else jumped out to you as far as when James said something that really clicked with you?
yeah. So I asked him personally about the running back number 3 competition. Obviously, that's been a story pretty much all off season because Cam Wallace, the incumbent, was coming off the big injury last year, really, really tough looking injury against Kent State. And then Corey Smith and Quentin Martin both are redshirted, have no reason they can't play this year. Thought it was a really intriguing storyline. Still is a storyline. James Franklin said it's still a battle. But look, Cam Wallace looked pretty darn good in that outing. The hurdle alone was enough to kind of prove, hey, he's feeling healthy. Shades of Saquon there, especially wearing the 26 jersey. Just a really good debut this season for Cam Wallace. he and Corey Smith both got about 11 snaps.
Yeah.
It's still a battle going forward. All those guys are still going to play in these first three games. Quentin Martin, asked about him specifically because he did not play. James Franklin said he tweaked something in camp that held him out for about 2 weeks. He's healthy enough to play, but just hadn't gotten enough reps that they wanted to throw him into the game right now. I expect him to play either this week or next week. Still a competition, but man, a lot of really good stuff from James Franklin on Cam Wallace. And I do feel like that probably leans in the direction of him retaining the true number 3 job down the stretch, because he had the experience last year. And if he's healthy, why not win it again?
I gotta give Cam a little credit. He's got some guts too, man. You wear 26 at Penn State. It's obviously not like the number 11 at Penn State, not yet anyway. But you wear 26 and then you do that. The people remember that. So hopefully, I think it says something about his confidence that he's not afraid to embrace that. And I'm glad he finally was able to make it back. He did have some very nice moments against Nevada. And if the number 3 competition isn't over, Max, I think they got a number 3 and a number 3A. I think we saw them both. The other guys might be ready at some point, but those guys, I think, I would keep watching them. And I just wanted to say that when he was talking about the defensive line depth guys that got in, because he said they played 73 guys. It was like 36-3 midway through the third quarter. He talked about all of them. He talked about Chaz Coleman being a little bit nervous, which obviously you can get that playing your first game at Beaver Stadium. Yeah. He was probably a little bit shaky there, but he had his moments. But the guys what I wanted to talk about with you, you won't necessarily see a lot of it in the stat column because Nevada didn't really have a lot of offensive plays. I think they had 52 snaps. I think Penn State had 71. But Ty Blanding had a couple of plays inside in that game, and so did Anai White. Anai White just missed on about a 7-yard tackle for loss, but to me what was impressive was his quickness inside. At 200, James now officially is keeping the weight count. He was at 275, I think, last week.
Yeah.
James, quick to note that he's 276 this week. He wants him up to 285 by midseason. Those two guys, though, showed that they can make plays and they can kind of be disruptive inside. And I want to make sure I'm very careful in how I say this, Max, because I'm not making a comparison. But I will say this. One of those plays that Ty Blanding made inside just reminded me a little bit of Zane Durant. Now, I'm not saying he's Zane Durant 2.0, but I'm saying, though, there is some ability there that is not typically seen from your average defensive tackle.
Well, I'll take that and I'll raise it, Bob, and say he's also kind of similarly sized to Zane Durant.
Yeah.
295 right now.
Yeah.
Obviously has not put it together as quickly as Zane Durant did because Zane was playing since his freshman year.
Yeah.
But Blanding certainly got some potential. I'm glad you went there with the defensive line as our next topic because I really walked away, for the most part, impressed. I thought that was, obviously other than wide receiver, which we've beat to death for a good reason. I thought defensive line was the position that we needed to see the most out of, had the most questions about. I still think that the defensive ends opposite of Denai Dennis Sutton have some work to do.
Yeah.
But they're young and they showed good things. And by the time the Oregon game rolls around, I feel like you'll have Zariah Fischer back. You'll feel pretty good about that room. What I walked away from Saturday thinking, and even after hearing James talk today, those defensive tackles might be a heck of a lot better than we thought they were going to be. Yeah. I think they genuinely have probably 6 guys who by, the midway point of the season, we say if they're on the field, it's going to be all right. And I think what James was saying about Enai White especially really leapt off the page to me because he moved inside from defensive end this summer. And the first thing he says was, I think we found a home for Enai White. And it was right away he said that, and he said it pretty emphatically. Some really good plays for a guy who was a highly rated prospect. And Xavier Gilliam, too, who we haven't even mentioned yet. Right. I think, according to PFF, take that with as much of a grain of salt as you want. I think PFF graded him as the highest defensive tackle for Penn State in that game.
Yeah.
I'm really encouraged by the depth on the interior. We'll see when they face a team that really can punish you with the run. But right now, I came away from that game really impressed by the defensive line.
Yeah, and again, the defensive line, especially the tackles, it's a lot like the offensive line. They do a lot of the dirty work.
Mm-hmm.
You can play well. You can play well at offense on the offensive line or on the defensive line, especially inside, and not get a lot of credit. But if Drew Shelton gets called for holding, I guess it was a hold, but that's what everyone's probably going to remember about, right? Drew Shelton's day, and he is a really, 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 really good, versatile tackle. So those, and your point is right. Like it doesn't show up in the stats, but those guys were in the backfield. Xavier Gilliam had his fingerprints all over Zane Durant's interception. Like if you just watch, he was closing in on that quarterback who probably was terrified. I thought for a second he might have got his hand on the ball, but he definitely impacted that throw. And those are the plays that you make one or two of those a game against a good team. That's the difference in the game. So to your point, they might not have 4 defensive tackles. They might have 5, maybe 6. And I also think we probably should give some credit to Deion Barnes for kind of his work. He was the conference call assistant coach on Thursday. He was asked a lot of questions about a lot of the defensive linemen, a lot of the reserve guys. Thoughtful replies, and he had something interesting to say about every one of them. So clearly, he's a guy that can recruit. He played the position. I think he was the Big Ten Freshman of the Year in 2012 or 2011. Very good player, and I think the players play hard for him. And I think when you look at the Penn State staff that Franklin has assembled, he gets a lot of credit for that, and there are a lot of good guys. Deion's probably a guy that, he's not the first or second or third or fourth name you probably rattle off, which is a testament to how good the staff is, but he's doing a really good job.
Yeah, he's great. I do think that his age and his closeness in age to the players makes a huge difference. Ever since he got that job, what are we talking about, 2 years ago now? They were just clamoring for him to get the full-time job once John Scott left. And you can even kind of see it when he interacts with us in the media. He's very personable. I think he's done a fantastic job there. There's a reason why they've been able to reload at defensive end every year when you go from Abdul Carter to Denai Dennis Sutton, even back to Chop Robinson, Adisa Isaac, as far back as you want to go.
Yep.
Deion Barnes was a GA on those staffs before he got the full-time job. His fingerprints are all over what this defensive line looks like. And, he straight up told me in May when we had our annual assistant coaches avail. I asked him, I was like, look, you lost a lot. What are you looking at here? And he said, I don't really know right now because I got to see a lot of these guys do it once they put pads on. Yeah. But what I do know is that we're going to be okay. Guys who we're not talking about right now are going to show up by the time we're in the season. And he backed it up. It's already happening. It's been 1 week and it's already happening.
Yeah, I would just say let's just be a little bit cautious because it was a team that, but you can see the ability. I guess is what I would say.
Absolutely.
More than the result, and I know that this is one of the worst probably offenses they're going to see all year. But if they can do this in week 1 in their first game, you would expect there's such a good development program that these guys are going to get some confidence. They're going to get they're going to start to figure things out. The game is going to slow down for them, so it speaks to them being on the fast track, and that's how they need to be. It doesn't necessarily matter what happened on Saturday or what's going to happen in the next 2 games, but what really matters is what's going to happen beginning on the last Saturday in September, and then it's going to be literally every week. The stakes are going to get higher and higher. So I do agree with you. I wanted to say, Max, as we continue on this blue-white breakdown here, Labor Day weekend, I know that you and Johnny are going to be on live on Thursday. I'm sure that'll be an exciting show. But I wanted to say I'm still trying to figure out if this was a backhanded compliment or James was being unintentionally funny. But one of the things that stood out to me is he was talking about Ethan Grunkemeyer's performance in the game. I think he was 7 of 9, made some very nice throws. You could see the arm strength, the arm talent, and he actually showed off his wheels. I think he ran for a touchdown. James said he played better in the game than he's been playing in practice. I'm sorry. I love when those moments occur because I think if James could have walked that back, he would have. But it also speaks to, you always hear coaches say some players don't really turn it on until it's actually a game, and they're just kind of in practice. You can see it, but they're not nearly as consistent. But he did say that about Ethan.
Yeah, I think so. He followed up. Excuse me. There was a follow up question about that comment and about Ethan Grunkemeyer, and he kind of expanded on it a little bit. I'm not sure if it was a backhanded compliment, but it was pretty funny.
Yeah,
Basically, and I believe what he said is a lot of guys, especially at the quarterback position, kind of get empty reps during practice
yeah,
because they know they can't be hit. If a
yeah,
defensive lineman even comes close to them, they're probably running laps. It happens all the time, uh,
yeah,
and so you're playing in practice without that internal clock going off. You're playing without really facing any pressure. It's just different. And so he got into the game and looked really good. I was thoroughly impressed with what Ethan Grunkemeyer did, especially in his first drive when it was still early in the fourth quarter and they were still running the full offense to some extent.
yeah,
And he went 15 plays. He hit over the middle a very nice throw to Khalil Dinkins on time.
yeah,
And he had the two plays where he kind of got out of the pocket and extended it a little bit, hit his check down in Cam Wallace and Andrew
yeah.
Rapplier, and those both ended up going for explosive plays. I mean he was in full control. Just the one other thing that I would say about it too is I think it speaks to how good Penn State's defense is. I'm sure there's part of that in here where
Yeah.
even Penn State's second string defense is probably better than Nevada's first string.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that probably has something to do with how well Ethan Grunkemeyer played. But still,
Yeah.
first time extended action for him. Really
Yeah.
came away impressed.
Max, I also wonder, just to wrap up the Ethan talk. I just wonder, you know, in practice, he was in a battle, right? He was in a battle for the number 2 job, and maybe Penn State had made up its mind midway through August. But I think when you know and you're not quite sure that you're going to be the backup, because if you're going to be the backup, Drew's gone. Drew's gone in a couple of months. If you're going to be the backup this year, you got the pole position, man, to
Yeah.
being the next starting quarterback at Penn State. I just wondered if he maybe relaxes a little bit and said,
hmm
"Look, I don't need to press. I'm the guy. They told me I'm the guy. I can. They're going to live. They can live with some hiccups, but they believe in me." And I just wondered. Then you just kind of, once you relax and what you do well naturally just kind of comes out. Whereas when you're not quite sure and you're afraid that if you do something wrong in practice, it could set you back. Because James was quick to remind us that it was definitely a competition, and he was quick to single out how well Jackson played in the
Yeah.
spring game. So I just think I think what you said. I think the fact that he got named the starter, and I think that some players just going against the Penn State defense cannot be easy in practice. But I do think he is going, now that he's going to relax, because there's not really much question about his talent. I think you're going to see him take a pretty big step on the practice field. And if he does get into the next 2 games, I think we're going to see more of the same.
Yeah, just one other thing to kind of drive that point home. Keon Wiley, the linebacker,
Yeah.
who had a season-ending injury last year and then came back and played a little bit this year, key depth piece. James Franklin said like kind of the same thing in a different context. He says Keon's always been one of the best athletes in our room, but I feel like at times he doesn't go out and just play. He's always worried about, making sure he's right, doing everything perfectly, not making a mistake, rather than just letting his instincts go, playing football, being the athlete we know he is. And so I think there is absolutely aspects of that for Grunkemeyer, who comes in and finally is the true backup and is able to just play football in a game where there's no
Yeah.
stakes. It's season opener. You're winning by 45 points. I think you're absolutely right on the right track, and I think that you see examples of that across a lot of different situations.
Yeah, Max, before we get out of here on the Blue White Breakdown podcast, I wanted to get some thoughts, toss some thoughts your way, and you can toss them my way. Heard from a lot of fans, and I expected to hear from a lot of fans. James talked about it after the game. Look, man, they didn't punt. Now
Yeah,
they were 7 for 7 in the red zone. They did settle for some field goals. There were some snafus there. The running game was 3.8. They got Nick and Katron out of there fairly early. I think each of them had 8 carries apiece. Nick actually did some nice things as a receiver. I am not in the camp that said I am not concerned. I'm not concerned at all about the running game. I think offensive line, even as good as they are, it still takes a couple weeks to get on the same page. James referenced they didn't block the 3 technique on one play. It led to, it pretty much ended like a drive, and that's going to happen early in the season, regardless of how talented you are. But when you look at the red zone and the fact that the Zane Duran interception, I think, gave him a 1st and goal at the 6. They ended up settling for a field goal. My thought about the red zone is this: it's easy to forget about the trust that Drew Aller had in Tyler Warren last year and how much better he made them, especially from in close, because he was such a matchup nightmare. And Drew knew that if he threw it, he knew where Tyler was going to be, and he knew that Tyler could go up and get it. He was such an athlete. If he just got it somewhere close, I think the key to the red zone is going to be the continued development, obviously, of the wideouts. But I think as the tight ends get more in sync with Drew, and they have athletic tight ends, you could see it in the week 1. I think you're going to see some bigger plays inside. I think Luke Reynolds is a guy that I think he had 1 or 2 catches in the game. Khalil had caught 1 pass. He looked really good doing it. And Rapplier got some valuable reps. I think he had 3 catches. To me, the red zone is going to be the productivity is going to go up once there's a more solid connection with those tight ends, especially. But I do think that it's easy to forget that Drew and Tyler had an unbelievable connection last year, and you just can't replicate that early in the season, I don't think.
No, you can't. And the other thing that James Franklin said today, as it pertains to the running game, was, look, if you look at our team from last year and in week 1, teams are going to try and take away our best proven commodity. And for Penn State, that was very clearly Nick Singleton and Katron Allen on the ground, because Tyler Warren's not there anymore. So Nevada played that specifically to stop those guys. They played a lot of loaded boxes, a few 5-man fronts, and Penn State was successful in targeting wide receivers on the other end to counteract that. You got to keep doing those things. You got to get the tight ends involved, but the passing game has to take the expected step forward in order for that run game to get going and for things in the red zone to open up a little bit more, because if you try and put the ball on the ground when you have no wide receiver pedigree to show for from the last season, it's probably going to be hard to do right away early in the season. So those wide receivers need to pick it up, and I agree with you. The red zone threat that Tyler Warren is not easily replaceable. We'll see if Khalil Dinkins can do it. James Franklin, high praise for Khalil Dinkins. He gave that nod, the most complete tight end in the country, to him this year, which was a recurring nickname for Tyler Warren last year on his way to winning the Mackey Award. And he said it about Khalil Dinkins today, which, I think Khalil Dinkins is a really good player. Yeah. That's high praise.
It is. And when Penn State's running game got going late last year, you could draw the parallel. Say from maybe the Ohio State game, because Ohio State's defense was so good. After Tyler went off in the USC game, I think defenses took a long, hard look at their approach and said, maybe we're not going to try and stop the running game first. Maybe we're going to back off, and we're going to put a lot of attention on number 44. And I'm sure that had something to do with Nick and Katron and that running game really get going. Well, they don't have that right now, right? There's no one established yet. But when somebody does get established, whether it's one of the tight ends, I still think Luke Reynolds, man, once he gets his feet under him, just what he can do athletically, and also a healthy Ross. And I think that Drew already really trusts Hudson and Pena, and I just think they'll build on that. But they're gonna play 5-man D lines, and they're gonna play 8-9 in the box until somebody scares them to death in the passing game like Tyler Warren did. And I think it's going to happen. They're not going to be Tyler Warren, but if 2 or 3 of these guys start consistently hurting people, they're just not going to be able to give that attention to the 2 running backs, and then you're going to see them go off.
Yeah. Johnny and I have said it a few times on Thursday podcast, Bob, this summer. But it's kind of the Moneyball idea where you don't have Tyler Warren, but you
Right.
might be able to recreate him in the aggregate this year.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
you've got a lot of names that can do things, and in some ways that might even be better than having a Tyler Warren on the field because you can spread the field. Not that you wouldn't want Tyler Warren on the field, but I guess the situation where it's really just Tyler Warren and the wide receivers are kind of, they're there, but they're not really. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think in a perfect world, Kyler Warren comes back and these receivers
Yeah.
stay.
Yeah.
And then I think good luck. Good luck trying to defend
Yeah.
this offense. But you can't have it all, Max. Some people are going to have to step up. They did it last year. I think they have the athletes to do it this year, and all they need. I just the overreaction just about, oh my God, the running game, this offensive. I'm like, guys, look, man.
Yeah.
The biggest thing that my two biggest takeaways from the Nevada game are they got Singleton and Allen out of that game with very, very little wear and tear, in that game. And you can say what you want about the non-conference schedule. What these backups look like at key positions before the season and what they're going to look like by maybe October 1st, I think it's going to be worth it. But you're just not going to beat every team. You're not going to win every game by 45 points. Sometimes the other team, to their credit, kind of hung in there. If Penn State played their guys for 4 quarters, Nevada's going to finish with 3 points, and Penn State's probably going to finish with 61. But they got what they needed to get done, and I think Penn State fans just got to see the big picture.
Yeah, I think it's really encouraging. I think every time I've tried to put my thoughts, whether on a podcast or whatever, the post game video, I try to be clear. Like, yeah, there are things that need to be better, but also it's week 1. Plenty of teams don't look this good in week 1. Penn State has, some depth pieces that are learning on the fly. All in all, this is a really, really positive performance. And nothing in that game that happened concerns me right now, aside from like do it better in Oregon game. Once we get past Oregon, we'll talk about it. But right now, just not worried at all.
Max, if you're not worried, I'm not worried. So we're both not worried as we sign off here on the Blue White Breakdown podcast. Just remember, we're going to have a Thursday live podcast with Max and Johnny McGonigal. I promise at some point, once there's something a little bit more meaningful to say, I'm going to weigh in with probably a third podcast. But I was thinking last week, I'm like, what could I possibly offer as a third podcast about how badly, Penn State's is going to just, eviscerate Nevada. I mean, it's just, when the time's right, you're going to hear from all of us, probably with some solo pods. But I hope you guys had a good time. I hope you guys enjoyed the game. And Max, you and I are going to continue to be watching the defensive line and the backups, because I think that storyline, Grunkemeyer's development, the special teams play in all phases, I think those are 3 underrated storylines well worth pursuing as we get closer to Penn State's whiteout game with Oregon. What say you before we sign off?
Yeah, I think that's what I'm watching. I want to see Gabe Nwosu punt. I think that would be great. I could see him. I'd love to see him attempt a 60-yard field goal too, but I kind of doubt that happens. And I'm going to keep having my eye on the running backs because I think Cam Wallace has the head start right now. But I do think because, and I've mentioned this before, I think because of the presence of Smith and Martin being in their second years, I think they'll probably all see the field in some capacity. But it looks like Cam Wallace has the upper hand.
All right, Penn State fans, we're going to bid you adieu. It is PSU FIU week 2. James Franklin will continue to preach 1-0, 1-0. I don't think they have any worries. I'm not trying to give away my pick, Max, but I'm pretty confident in Penn State this week.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to your guys' podcast on Thursday and some of the stories you're going to be writing. So thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. And thank you, James Franklin, for being you on this during this Monday presser, because you gave us a lot to talk about and a lot to write.